Dude, it's not that far away. It's really not that far away. Let me take my shoes off. Make it home. Make myself at home here. Anyway, thank you, Super Don, and that was fun. And where is Lisa Rooney? I'm just anxiously awaiting her. Hey, Lisa!
Hello. I
Here we
love your
go.
studio.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
So I
I'm
can't
coming
wait.
out there.
You will.
I'll figure out how to come out there when we're having our, when we're scheduled to talk,
Yes,
and then we can sit together. That'll be so much fun.
that would be amazing. Two homeopaths in one room. They'll never believe it.
Never shut up about it.
That is awesome. So, anything you have to say about the opening story about SSRIs and other things, I'd love to get your insight as well. Double down, triple down, add some stuff I couldn't see. Make that painting even more beautiful.
Yeah, I'm right on your same page. I love your passion about this particular topic. I have the same passion. Um, and I agree with you on everything that you said. All of the areas that we need to look at before we, resort to the pharmaceuticals. And I think there's a lot that we can do to prevent moving into the pharmaceuticals, especially the SSRIs. My history, my experience with SSRIs came about when I was in my early 20s, and it was after my mom had passed away. Just before I, kind of got on the holistic path, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and candida, and spent 2 years in the allopathic system trying to get diagnosed with that. And what they kept telling me was, well, this is just depression. Your chronic fatigue is depression because your mom died, and
Mm.
that's why. And so I couldn't pull out of it. I didn't know what was going on, and so I tried some SSRIs. I did Zoloft, and I think it was Wellbutrin,
Wow.
and it was not very long, probably less than a year, but I could never get on the right dose. I could never really actually get to a place where I felt better. I think at one point it probably did take the edge off a little bit, but it never got rid of the fatigue that I had, because obviously at that point I had chronic fatigue syndrome.
Right.
And so when I finally made my way to a physician that could help me, he was like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
and just, you're not on that, you're not on that, you're not on that.
Nice.
And I think it's really interesting because as I've gotten older and I've gone through and I've cleared my system of some of those pharmaceuticals that I was on in my early 20s, and then of course my childhood growing up in a military family, very allopathic. When I cleared out the antidepressants and I supported my system with serotonin in homeopathic form, I started sleeping
Mm.
so much better.
Oh, I love that you mentioned the homeopathic form of serotonin because it was occurring to me too when I talk about moving up or particularly moving down when people
Mhm.
realize, my gosh, this stuff is dangerous, but it becomes more dangerous when you're kind of changing
Mhm.
levels.
Yeah.
That this is an area where we can convert something like an actual drug like Prozac, Paxil, or Zoloft into its homeopathic form to
Yes.
help facilitate a safer removal from the body, as well as addressing the extremes of things that happen. And you also mentioned about chronic fatigue. One of the things I pointed out is like when you have no energy, it's really hard to be happy. I mean, you're just
Incredibly.
like, I want to be, but I got no
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah. Incredibly. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say another thing about that. As a society, and I think in the general allopathic model, let's just say, there's the backstory there is you shouldn't ever experience pain. You shouldn't ever experience discomfort. Like, we live in a society where being upset, being happy, being angry is something that we try to suppress. I think I've talked about this on the show, maybe the last time we talked about it, this suppression. And one of my first homeopathic teachers taught me the suppressed case is always going to go wrong. And especially when we're suppressing the emotions, it's
Hmm.
always going to go wrong. And so we have to, as a society, get to a place where we can be in the darkness because of our loss, because of our frustration, because maybe we're not on point, we don't know exactly, maybe we're having a spiritual crisis, or maybe we don't know exactly, we're in a career transition, and going into that darkness and being in that darkness, spending time there, figuring out kind of what's, where you're at, what's going on, listening to spirit, listening to yourself and then coming back out of it is a perfectly normal part of being alive. And so I think that, we don't have
We
to suppress.
pathologize normalcy, if we can call it that, right? Having an
Yeah,
emotion becomes a
right.
druggable offense, like with children.
Yeah.
How about the children that are largely healthy that are diagnosed with ADHD simply because they don't learn well sitting down for 8 hours in a day? They've got so much energy because they are healthy. I'm not talking about those that are hopped up on all the, hyper functional or
Hmm.
hyper stimulating things, but there's something so artificial about the way we've adopted life in the West. And I'm not saying there's no good things in there, but good Lord, what a mess that we pathologize normal human emotions for drugging.
Absolutely. And this is a huge fact, a huge focus within my practice when I'm working with my coaching clients, even my homeopathic clients. Um, but within my coaching program, which also includes the homeopathic consults, we really make time to understand, what are your emotions? What are you feeling? Why are you feeling that? And it's remarkable when I help to normalize the emotions that my clients are feeling, the anger, the frustration, the disappointment, and give them room to really feel that, even if it's just 1 hour twice a month. Give them room to feel those emotions, because we have this innate ability to figure things out within us. We all have this deep intuition about what's best for us, but sometimes we just need the room, the time, the space, and the supportive ear, to help us figure it out. And that's what's not offered out in society, because there's too many things on the plate, too many places we got to be, too many things we're responsible for. Nobody has any margin in their lives anymore.
This
And we
was
should
this
all
is this is where humor is one of the tools I use besides homeopathy,
yeah,
another H word to get by.
yeah,
Find the funny in everything. If you can't, it can be very depressing, right?
yeah,
And I think that, you know, I didn't hit that in the monologue, but it occurs to me as we're talking about, like this morning, I'm looking around going, what an insane morning. I woke up, the sprinkler people are here because it's time to wake up that system, as everything's coming green again and we can irrigate the garden, etc. And then I've got a training scheduled with a doctor's group that I'm teaching on silver and copper. And then I'm on another podcast interview right before this show. And it's like this morning, I'm like, ah. And so I'm walking around the kitchen just doing crazy things. And my wife's looking at me going, and she's been with me for over 30 years, but she's still going, man, you're really weird. And I'm like, this is how I'm coping with this morning, because if not, I'm like, I'm just like, I'm going to be silly as can be to help me just kind of dissipate that energy. And by the way, I did take a little gummy of CBD and I feel really cool and chill at this point compared to what I could be feeling, because today is
yeah.
one of those days like you were just describing.
Yeah, my husband is really good about that. I mean, when he sees me or the kids or anything, there's always stress. He will either throw in like a movie quote, or he'll drop in something so funny that makes us all just stop and go, okay. But you're exactly right. Humor can be
By the way,
amazing.
I'm wearing this t-shirt I got over the weekend. Me, y'all might have heard of this, "Make America Healthy Again." I think it's a good message. It's
Yeah.
kinda like, uh, a a a loving, subtle way of saying, "You know what? We could have a lot in common if we just are supporting people's health." And it's like the t-shirt I wore this weekend in San Diego when I went to the co-op with my friends from Austria, and it said, "You be safe, I'll be free," right?
I
And
love it.
and the co-op people were like, "Ooh, I don't know if we like that." You could see their smirks. They were looking at me, because it's a threat to their comfort world of a authoritarian
Mhm.
society, being told what to do, being prohibited, limited, forced, etc. And then when I went to the beach, there were homeless people on the beach were giving me thumbs up because they really, you want to talk about someone who appreciates freedom, they were probably homeless by choice. And we might look
Mm.
down on their choice, but they appreciated and respected that I believed in freedom. And so it's an interesting perspective here as well. I think part of the problem with depression, or the preponderance of depression, or even with children with ADHD, which is being put in this artificial world of you have to fit into this box. What if you
Mhm.
don't? And then you have to find, everybody forces you, whether it's your parents, they're trying, they love you, they want you to do best, but it doesn't fit your spirit, right? And then you become depressed and they say, "Oh, well, let's put you on a drug so we can drug you back into that box." I'm like, "Dude, that's the wrong thing to be doing." I'm saying that, and I'm a freedom guy, and somebody said, "Well, why do you say it's wrong?" I was like, "Well, not everybody is meant to live according to the way we think is normal." Now, as long as they're not violating the rights of anyone else, hurting people, where's the tolerance for people that live differently than us? I mean, I think that's funny because the conservatives now, you look at the groups that have ended up supporting both Bobby Kennedy and Trump, they could have purple hair. They're like, yeah, purple hair. We don't care. Do you love freedom? Yeah, we're in. We're all there. All this stuff. So the intolerance could be depressing. What we see in some of these people at cooperatives that really adopt a collectivist Marxist view of the world.
Absolutely. Well, and just to piggyback on top of that, also the consumerism.
Mhm.
You need more. You need to have more. You need the bigger house. You need the bigger, the latest and greatest. I mean, I think there's plenty of evidence that shows that the social media environment that we are living in is really creating, some of that depression, that desire, that want for more, and thinking that you're going to feel better when you get more, and it never works.
Mm,
It never works. I always find that when I quiet everything, that's when I come back to myself. And then I
yeah.
can figure out what's going on with my anger or my depression or my frustration or, whatever it is. And then, of course, with the use of homeopathic remedies. And what
Yes.
we can talk about, the next month, we can talk about Aurum Metallicum. We could do a homeopathic hit on Aurum Metallicum, which is a
Oh, I
great
would
remedy for
love
depression.
that. Oh, I would so love that. You know why? Because I'm working with the folks over at Natural Immunogenics, and they're almost out of R&D phase on their gold hydrosol, which is, working with the silver and the copper they have, very much aligned with homeopathic principles, even though it's not officially that. The energy, the potency, if you will, very similar. So I would love that. Let's put that. Hey, Super Don, mark that down for
Yeah.
May, and let's hit Orem, at least Orem. But yeah, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
exciting. I'm
I
already
think
excited for next month.
yeah, it'd be a great, it's actually one of my favorite remedies.
Mhm.
And I use it pretty frequently in my practice because I have clients that come to me who are either on SSRIs or anti-anxiety type medicines, and they're either looking to wean off of those, or they're looking for support while they're on them, or they're looking to avoid getting on them. And so, I don't tell anybody to come off of their meds without talking with their doctor. That's something that they need to work through with their doctor. But homeopathy offers great support if you're trying to, wean off of those medications.
Exactly. Hey, Super Don, if you don't mind opening up your microphone, I'm just, normally what I try to do, and I'm not fully disengaged from multitasking a little bit when we do this show because it's still a small team, me and Super D, and of course Mark D is amazing. When I go on the air, a lot of times I will right before in that opening bed, I'll do on Facebook, which we still have a lot of people that watch on Facebook. So I want to honor that. And I'll share the feed on the fans of the various groups that I'm a part of that like the show. And for some reason, I'm not seeing it pop up in my feed. So I don't know what's
Yeah,
going
I
on.
got I got a heads up on that right after we got started. Apparently, there's some sort of technical issue going on with connecting to Restream. So I've been checking with the support people, and they're working on
Okay.
it.
So it wasn't me losing
Nope,
my mind on
no,
this day. I don't need an SSRI
not
then.
today. Yeah,
Okay.
not today.
Thanks. And
Right.
and how many kids, was it 1 in 9 or something? It's a ridiculous
1 in 9.
number.
There's the report just came out about the autism,
Yes.
which is nuts. We'll be talking about that next hour with James Lyons Weiler, but also the other statistic that came out that not a lot of people are talking about: 1 in 9 kids in the United States, boys. I think it's boys or maybe it's kids, but either way, 1 in 9 are diagnosed with ADHD.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but nothing to see here. No, nothing to see
no.
here.
Better
It's it's
diagnosis,
it's
better
not
diagnosis.
getting worse. We're just detecting it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I say I'm embarrassed for doctors that would make that as an actual claim or try to do that. I get it if you're an industry shill, but if you pretend not to be and you say that, it's just I'm embarrassed for you. How did you graduate medical school if that's the case? Unless you just basically cheated your way through it, or you're just a robot at this point. This is not right. 1 in 9, much less the 1 in 12 number in California
Mhm.
for autism, which we'll cover with Dr. Jack next hour.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. That's absolutely extraordinary.
Amazing. Now, one of the things, even thinking and talking about this stuff, you talk about a headache, for instance. I will admit certain things, like I love to study and I can just be lost in study and be joyful in it. And there are other things you're just not interested in, that it pains you to have to read and research. And you can actually have a physical response to that, including a headache,
Headache.
interestingly enough. There are
Yeah.
a lot of reasons to discuss headaches. And, I've talked about it as a evidence of liver congestion, poor circulation, dehydration, a lot of things. But sometimes it can be brought on just by doing something we just really loathe doing, that we can have physical manifestation from the emotional response to that. That's the connection to all of our bodies, right? Why we can't just say it's purely a physiological manifestation, right? All of these,
Mhm.
that's why homeopathy encompasses all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about that with a couple of the remedies I want to talk about for headaches. So typically, you hear ibuprofen, naproxen, aspirin, Advil, Motrin, Tylenol. Those are all the things that kind of fall within this category. What people don't always know is that there's actually some pretty significant warnings about using these. I'm not so concerned about a one-off use, but if you are using them on a regular basis, if you're using them weekly or even daily or even, monthly over the period of your life, there's some pretty significant risks with using these. Gastrointestinal risks, everything from indigestion to heartburn, um, ulcers, bleeding. There's cardiovascular risks. They increase the chance of heart attack and stroke. We also want to be concerned about kidney damage, because what happens is there's reduced blood flow that leads to potential, kidney issues.
Hmm.
And then liver problems. You can get elevated liver enzymes or liver damage. And then other people, sometimes there's dizziness, head, you can actually have high blood pressure, allergic reactions. And I didn't know this, but the FDA has actually issued some black box warnings for some of these, excluding aspirin, due to the increased risk of serious cardiovascular events, and then also the elevated risk of the gastrointestinal issues and the ulcers and perforation and things of that nature. So when I'm working with a client that has been using, whether it's an over-the-counter or it's a pharmaceutical drug, and they've been using it on a regular basis, I'm always concerned about, okay, what are the organ systems that need support?
Yes.
Because we have certain organs that are going to have to process these drugs through our system, and so they are going to need additional support to help process that toxicity. So the organs that we want to be looking at and where we can start to see ailments develop that could turn into pathology are in the stomach, in the kidneys, and in the liver. The other thing we also want to look at whenever we're taking over-the-counter medicines or pharmaceuticals, especially on a continual basis or an ongoing basis, is what do those things deplete from the system? So in the terms of NSAIDs, folic acid, vitamin C, calcium, iron, magnesium, and zinc are the main things that are going to be depleted from the body. So whenever you're taking a pharmaceutical, because there are some people that maybe need to be on a pharmaceutical for whatever the condition is, and that's the best way to manage the condition. We want to make sure that we are giving those things back to the body, because the body is going to be depleted, and it's not typically your recommended daily allowance. You want to be giving more back into the system because the system is being depleted. So we always want to be thinking about that when we're utilizing any kind of chemical intervention. What, even if it's something that's helping us, what is it also depleting from our body? And those are all the things that we look at when I'm working with my clients. So, Super Don, you want to bring up the
Oh, we got some imagery here, y'all. This is classes in session. Sit down.
session.
Take your
Well,
ADHD drugs. No,
I
don't.
am a visual learner.
I
And
love
so,
that.
my classes are very visual because I'm a visual learner, and I love, when somebody can see something, then they can oftentimes remember it. So
There it
yeah.
is.
All right, so we've got a handful of things. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but what I wanted to, I kind of have grouped them a little bit. So the first two remedies that you're looking at there, Ignatia and Arnica. Okay, I must have I must have switched something up, because there was another one that I wanted to talk about, but maybe I didn't make that change.
Hey, blame Super Don. He put up the wrong slide, right?
No, I probably didn't get it to you after I made the change.
What?
So
What?
so when we think about, just like what you said, Robert, earlier,
Mhm.
what's going on emotionally? Okay, if you have a headache that comes on, we want to know what's going on emotionally. And oftentimes, it could be because of grief, it could be because of stress, it could be because of overwhelm, it could be because of anger.
Yeah.
And when we treat that emotional component,
Mhm.
oftentimes the physical component will go away, because the physical symptom is really just your body's communication.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, I'm completely overwhelmed. You're not listening to me. You're not doing what I'm asking. So I'm going to manifest this headache in order to get your attention.
Lisa, that is so good because it kind of mimics perfectly what I was trying to relate about, like concentrating on something you really loathe.
Yeah.
And that's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
It's not that you're incapable of doing it. It's like, I don't want to do this. And yet enough of that and you have a headache suddenly. Like Ignatia might not come up if you don't recognize the emotional element, but you might look at another headache remedy that's really focused on the physiology,
Right.
which that's not the issue. And you're like, well, why didn't it work? This is where people come to me like, I tried homeopathy once and it didn't work. I'm like, dude, that's just, you can't say that. There's so
Right.
many layers and levels to it. And of course, there are complex formulas that make it a little easier for folks to do, not have to worry about, is it hitting this or this? We got a number of things. But I wanted to acknowledge that Ignatia remedy is so cool because I just kind of described one of the manifestations that would be appropriate often for that.
Right. When during the flu season, among some of my homeopathic groups that I'm in, we had some colds and some coughs and some flus that came on, that just no remedy seemed to be moving it, until we went in and addressed the emotion behind it.
Mm.
What had happened within the 24 to 48 hours before that flu or that cold came on. And so that's an example of what you're just talking about. We can address the physiology, and I mean, homeopathy, for physiological remedies is amazing. We're going to talk about some of those things. But if there's an emotional component there, we also want to be looking at that and addressing that as well, because sometimes just addressing that gets rid of the physical.
Yes.
Yeah. So Ignatia is a great remedy. The other one that I wanted to mention that isn't on here is Staphysagria. So Ignatia is your overwhelm, your grief, your stress. Staphysagria is angry. Something made you really angry, and then you got a headache.
Hmm.
And we talked about Ignatia in September 18th of 2024. And then we also talked in depth about Staphysagria in October. I think it was the 23rd of October 23rd of 2024. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more about those remedies and the emotional component, go back and listen to the shows on Ignatia and Staphysagria.
Awesome.
So the other remedy there is Arnica. Arnica is a great remedy for pain. And it's also an awesome shock remedy. So if you have a shock and then you manifest a headache, if you're having just general kind of overall pain, body aches, it's a great remedy for that. It's also one of the keynotes to Arnica is that you feel like you've been beat up. So think about, like, if you have a very difficult conversation and you just feel like you're being beat up emotionally, and then you start getting a headache and you start getting pain and aches, you can also take Arnica. I had a client many, many years ago that she like Arnica was her go-to for everything. When she didn't feel good, she took Arnica. When she was having stroke, difficulty sleeping, she would take Arnica. When she had a bump or a bruise, she would take Arnica. And she took it for everything. And she just said, it works. It's the best remedy ever. And I love Arnica for all of those reasons. So then the other three remedies there really focus a little bit more on the physiology. And now, what I want to say about headaches is that there are a ton of remedies that can be used for headaches. And when we're really getting into headaches and treating them homeopathically, we're getting into some very specifics. Is it on the right side? Is it on the left side? What type of pain is it? Is it stabbing? Is it shooting? Does it move from one side to the other? There's a lot of very, very detailed information about headaches. So what we're talking about here are just some of the general basic ones. and then some really good combinations to kind of get you started. But if you suffer from chronic headaches, we may need to dig into some more particulars and some more details about your chronic headaches and what's going on there. But these first three, Belladonna, Nux Vomica, and Bryonia, are three great remedies for headaches. Now, to differentiate when you would use one versus the other, Belladonna, the headache that comes with Belladonna is very sudden. It's kind of an intense headache. It's typically going to have throbbing or pounding pain, that boom, boom, boom. Often there's redness, like your face might feel red. Sometimes you can have light sensitivity. And I always know when my kids need Belladonna, because I say to them, if I could see what's going on inside of your head, what would I see? And if they say, oh my gosh, it feels like it's on fire, or it's like
Mhm.
pounding, boom, 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 a drum pounding, then I know that I need to turn to Belladonna.
Very good. And I'll just add this because so many people encounter belladonna as a children's fever remedy most
Mhm.
commonly. And here's the dilemma, if you're a homeopathic manufacturer and you see in the materia medica all of uh, the symptom picture of belladonna, how do you choose what to put on the label? How do you choose which way you're going to market it? Those are more marketing decisions to a general public. And even, for the homeopath that may buy these remedies if they don't make their own, they may use belladonna in ways like we're talking today about headache. It may not be even on the label, and somebody might look at it and go, wait, it doesn't say headache on the label. And then you have to explain, here, look at this, all the things it does. So the selection of indications for use are determined by how the manufacturer might want to target the market, for the
Right.
purchase to the consumer, for instance.
Yep. Great point. Great point. And when I get that homeopathy 101 class out, I ran into some difficulty, and it's been pushed back a little bit. But when I get that class um, put out, we have a whole module on how to read the label and what to expect, and
Nice.
what the numbers mean and everything. And you're exactly right. I mean, these remedies, if you look in a materia medica, some of these remedies have pages and pages of things that they handle. They can't
Mhm.
put that on a label. So they're going to, choose, the most common indication for it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that point up.
And then we got two of my favorite of three liver polycrests that I always bring up, and
I know.
yet they have, even though they have some similar impact and crossover impact, they have unique personality, so to speak, to each of these.
Absolutely. So Nux Vomica, this is another one of my favorite remedies. This is headaches from overwork, from stress, from lack of sleep. Maybe you've had too much alcohol, like a hangover style headache, too much sugar, and then you've gotten, a headache, or maybe caffeine. Typically, people who need Nux Vomica tend to be a little bit more on the intense side. This very common remedy for your type A personalities, your corporate CEOs, where they're kind of like on adrenaline all of the time, and they oftentimes use caffeine or stimulants in order to kind of get through their day, because there's so much that they have to do, so much they're trying to accomplish, so much intensity. But the Nux Vomica is just what you want to think. Nux Vomica is it's too much. Everything is too much, and the headache comes on. If you're saying this is all just too much, my head is hurting, it's pounding, it's just too much, then you want to be thinking about Nux Vomica.
Yeah, you've overdone it. You've overexerted. You're over. It's like an indulgence thing. You partied really hardy last night, and you're
Right.
suffering today. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily have to be because you partied too hard.
Mhm.
It could just be like there's just like you've been working too much, or you've been concentrating entirely too much, and now you're getting a headache as a result of that.
Yeah, well, it's an
So,
imbalance of intensity that
yeah.
results in kind of a body rebound that Nux Vomica is really just made for.
Yep, absolutely. And then the last one is Bryonia. So Bryonia, the big keynote with Bryonia, and this goes for headaches and all symptoms that can be helped with Bryonia, is that it's worse for motion. So you have a headache and you do not want to move. You don't want to, don't, some people are so like it hurts so much they don't even want to move their eyeballs.
Yeah, you're talking about me as a child. I mentioned my experience with the smallpox vaccine. I'm old enough, they still gave it. And then shortly thereafter, they stopped. And I had that exact pain from movement, even my eyes moving. And I'll remember this indelibly to the day I'm not here. That pain. And we knew nothing of homeopathy. Had I had Bryonia, oh my gosh, what a different world it would have been for me.
Wow.
But I also look at, the life choices before we even get here. I was meant to suffer. I signed on for the suffering so that I would learn the things I've learned as an adult to help others to do the same or better as far as healing. And so part of our journey, when somebody asked me, what would you change? It's like, would you not be sick like that? And I'm like, yeah, in that moment, if I get back to that, I really did not like that. I wouldn't want to have that. But I recognize all of these things have paid dividends in a beautiful mission sense for me in this lifetime. And yet, anybody suffering right now with that kind of thing, I'm going to let you know about Bryonia. I always
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And Robert, to go back to what we were talking about before, that's one of the beauties of being in the darkness, is that we come out of that darkness with a different understanding of our purpose and our lessons in life. There's a strength, there's an internal strength that we develop that helps give us focus
Hmm.
when we spend time in the darkness, in the pain, in the suffering, and don't always push, work so hard to push it, to move on, to suppress it, to, not ever feel it. And, look what you're doing now as part of that suffering and part of that darkness. And
Hmm.
when we can think about the suffering that we've had in our lives and think about how do we learn from that? How do we grow from it? It doesn't necessarily always take away the pain and suffering. We still have to heal that, but we can definitely turn that into something that,
Hmm.
is good and positive in the world.
Yes. Well, wonderful. And as I said about the labeling, Bryonia is good for so many things
Yeah,
because it, primarily in my experience working with drainage is one of those key remedies for the liver. And anything that affects the liver for the better affects everything in the body. But there are some
absolutely.
unique specifics to that remedy, to Nux Vomica, and of course, one of my others, Gelidonium, as a
Yep.
liver polychrist too.
Yep. Yeah. And there were so many remedies I could have chosen to throw up there, but
Yes.
I really liked those because
I
they were
like your
kind of,
choice.
yeah, really, really common. Now, the other three there are your combination remedies. So, again, sometimes homeopathy, we want to get as individualistic as we can, really look at the individual, match the remedy to, the symptoms. But there are also tons of combination remedies and complex remedies out there. And sometimes we have so many symptoms that it's really hard to narrow it down. And that's when combination remedies can come into play. So they're also great for if you're just getting started on homeopathy and I don't really know and it feels super overwhelming. Just start with these combination remedies. And as we've talked about, in other episodes, take a look at the remedies that are on the back, read the label, and it's going to give you the indications for all the different remedies that are in there, and that will help you kind of narrow it down to, oh, this remedy and that remedy actually really fit my symptoms. And that's a great way to learn homeopathy as well. So this first one is from a company called Be Healthy. Now, these are cell salts. I really love this company. I have been recommending them for a long time now. I love the cell salts as a whole. They are kind of like a subset of homeopathy. They are made from um, mineral salts that we find within our system. So whereas homeopathic remedies are outside of the system, mineral salts are within the system. And so I use cell salts oftentimes to support whatever I'm doing homeopathically. And we have, going back to what we're talking about earlier with depletion in our society, and is depletion, the reason why you're having depression or ADHD or, whatever else it is that you're struggling with. Our minerals are so depleted that this is one of the main focuses of my practice, is bringing the mineral content back up in the body. And one
Mhm.
of the ways that I do that is through cell salts. Now, Be Healthy has some great combinations. So they have one that has all the 12 main cell salts in it, but they also have some very targeted ones. And this one is specific to headaches. It has ferrum phos, caliphos, magphos, and natmur in it. And these are all great, headache remedies in and of themselves, but you combine them as cell salts, and it's going to be very supportive for the system.
Excellent. Now we got a couple of minutes before the homeopathic hit of the day, so wrap
Yeah.
up on a couple of complexes here.
All right, so the next one is Newton's headache. That's a bigger complex. Another great option there. And then the third one is migraines. So migraines and headaches kind of come to, some people are like, I'm not sure if I'm having migraines. I'm not sure if I'm having headaches. Migraines are much more intense. And so this is also a great migraine remedy as well. So you've got three great options now with the Be Healthy. I have a relationship with them. So use code Lisa10 off and you get 10% off your order, whatever you order on their site from Be Healthy. So, Super Don, you want to flip to the next slide real quick?
See if he's even paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
okay.
he is.
So, again, I'm a visual learner. So this just illustrates there are several great headache charts out on the internet that you can find. And I've listed where the books that some of them come from. That first one is from Dr. Asa Hershoff. He's a personal friend of mine, a brilliant homeopath, brilliant naturopath. And he wrote a great book called Homeopathy for Musculoskeletal Healing. So that's a visual of like what the headache is going to feel like, and then the remedies associated with it. The one in the middle I just found on the internet. That's the one that I always refer to with my kids. I love that one. And then if you're kind of a flow chart person, that last one came from Homeopathic Prescribing. And it's a book of just flow charts for any condition that you can have. And I want to say to your audience, like, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to email you these slides, and then you can have these charts, to refer to.
Nice. Thank you. And
Yeah.
when people reach out to you, Lisa, as I hope they're doing from the show here, the audience, you're
Yeah.
still offering that 20-minute consult. You're not overwhelmed. You're okay.
Yes. So go to my website, vibrantlife247.com. Go to first thing you do when you go to the website is get on the wait list for my class. It's right there on the homepage. And as soon as I get that done, I will be emailing everyone and letting them know. You'll be the first to know. The second thing is go to the Work With Me page, and then that is where all of my offerings, all the things that I do. And right there at the top, you can sign up for a discovery call. We'll talk for about 20 or so minutes. We'll figure out what's going on with you, and then which one of my packages is best going to fit you. And make sure you mention that you heard me on the Robert Scott Bell Show, because you'll get $100 off whatever package we decide for you.
Nice. Unless you're really weird.
I'll even take the weird.
We don't have any weird people in our audience. What am I saying?
I actually have a sign right over here on my wall that says "A little weird is good."
I know. I love that. That's why we get along so well, and I'm so glad you're with me anytime you can be here. And I know that the next Zoom AMA is a weekday evening. I couldn't remember, was it last time or this time you might be able to make it?
I'm in. Yeah, I already
Okay.
RSVP'd. Yeah,
Because on a Saturday it's hard when you have kids. You got so many events, right?
Yeah. And I'm an adventurer. I like to be out and about and doing things. And we're coming into kayak season in Georgia, so
Oh my. Well,
yeah.
if I
Kayak,
make it out,
hiking.
next time I make it out to see mom, I'll make a point that we'll get together too.
Oh, that'd be great. I would love that.
That'll be awesome. So let's do the homeopathic hit of the day. It's already written out for you. You can research it further, and Lisa may have some options on this as well, but hit it, Super Don.
Playing all of the homeopathic hits every day, right here on the Robert Scott Bell Show.
As always, good luck on the Latin. Some of them are easier than others. Asclepias tuberosa. How about that? Thanks to Better Way Health and their beta glucan modulating the immune system for the better. Thanks to our friends at Folium PX and their amazing ability to grab things you don't want in your body, help usher them out, including ionizing radiation components. Ascent Nutrition, such clean products, and Lance Shuttler bringing it. Their support is immeasurable to help us to do this and more. Also, of course, Lisa Rooney, you know it, vibrantlife247.com, making these homeopathic hits sing even greater when she's on. And shout out to the official tool company of the Robert Scott Bell Show, Grip On Tools. It's important to have the right tool for the right job, and we got them with Grip. Thank you, Elias. Now, the remedy for chest congestion, pleurisy. When you say pleurisy, deep muscular pain. This is an amazingly important. Why am I hearing myself back? That's funny. This is a butterfly weed, it's called. I think there's a visual on it as well. This is one of those botanical remedies that has pretty profound effect. It's not subtle. Sometimes they're subtle. This is a lot of chest pain, pressure on the, in the chest area. and it has been used in bronchitis and things like this. Musculoskeletal inflammation in the thoracic region. You see, it's focused around that region. So if you have stitching pain in the chest that worsens with deep breathing, coughing, other things, radiating across the ribs, a tight, dry, irritating cough. It's not productive, but there's tightness, rib pain. You see these things keep coming back, right? Throat, interesting. There's an element of irritation of the larynx with huskiness, which is going to indicate another remedy potentially. Muscle aches, coughing, or flu could be indicated with this remedy as well. And you can use it. It's indicated mostly in very low potencies. But if you have a 10x, a 15x, a 12C, 30C, whatever, it's okay. And if you want to go up higher to really match it, I urge you to reach out to someone like Lisa Rooney to really nail that remedy so you're not wasting your efforts and not getting the results that you want. Now, as you scroll down on the page here, you'll see that we have complementary remedies that come up when I see this remedy, including Bryonia alba, which we just talked about. When movement, remember movement and pain, and that's what Lisa brought up. Phosphorus, which we love that remedy, tickling cough, chest tightness, lingering bronchial infections, if there's an associated fever as well. Rust toxicodendron, for aches and pains of all kinds, and it could be around the ribs. And when we heard the larynx and huskiness, I immediately thought, well, verbascum, that's that 976 Robert voice or Super Don voice you get, 1-900 Super Don. That's that voice thing, and it'll help there. So if you want to utilize this remedy as an indicated remedy for tightness on the chest or other things, check it out. Read the Materia Medica, learn more. This is just a starter, give you an indication of what you can do. And it not to replace a doctor if you have or want one, or someone like Lisa if you need. She's wonderful to go further than that. But I don't want you to be lost without this information. I'd rather have you have the information and make better informed decisions than not have it and feel lost. And Lisa, as much as we can give away this information, I'm not at all concerned. There'll never be enough homeopaths to meet the needs out there.
Agreed. There's plenty of people that need help. Yeah, I haven't actually used this remedy, but I think this is a very important remedy that really needs to come into the fold because of because of COVID. We are now in my estimation, we are now in a very in a miasm that is always going to be hitting the chest. So we want to make sure as home users and as homeopaths that we are really clear on the remedies that can help our clients with chest stuff. It
Mhm.
seems like all the colds, all the flus, bronchitis, it's all landing in the chest. And so I've never had to use this remedy because typically Bryonia has taken care of that pain.
Right. Yes.
But this is going to go a little bit deeper, and you can also alternate. This may be indicated, and you can alternate it with Bryonia or maybe phosphorus or one
Well
of the
said.
these as well.
Yeah, and when we do a homeopathic hit each day, obviously we're going through hundreds of them, and occasionally we hit obscure remedies that you and I both have never used. It
Right.
doesn't mean that they're not valid, but boy, oh boy, it's nice to go. I remember when we covered that, and suddenly it lights up that this could be appropriate this time. As you
Yeah.
said, though, many times the most commonly used and prescribed remedies are enough. Therefore, we don't have to, move to that. Not that it's not helpful or worthwhile, but if you resolve it without it, it's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I tell people, especially if they're learning about homeopathy, is if you have a tendency for weakness in the chest, if you get, colds and flus that land in the chest, if you have a tendency towards pneumonia, bronchitis, pleurisy, things of those nature, then those are the remedies you really want to focus on, and those are the ones you want to learn about, and you want to make sure that you've got those in your home, and you've got some notes about I love like an Excel spreadsheet of when you would use each
Make
of
your
these different
pharmacy with the
remedies.
information. Beautiful.
Yeah,
And I just think about the recent measles cases that were actually ending up being pneumonia.
yeah,
Here's a remedy that might hit it when nothing else does, perhaps. So it's a timely remedy. I agree. Asclepius tuberosa
yeah,
in Latin.
yeah.
Try that 3 times fast. All right, Lisa. Well, that went fast,
It did. It always does.
and I don't have a headache.
Well, if you do, I've got your remedies for you.
I know you do. Well, lots of love to your husband and your kids, and I'm looking forward now that I know you're going to be at the next AMA. That's exciting. Everybody's going to be like, now I'm showing up for sure.
Yeah, I'm totally excited about it. As soon as I got the email, I looked at my calendar and I was like, it's
Yay! All right.
in.
Well, let's do it. I've got a whole other hour, and you know what it's about. This staggering figure of the increase in autism rates. particularly in California, but elsewhere. And our friend Dr. James Lyons Weiler from IPAC is on to give us a breakdown of what's going on, what we might expect in September with the predictions. Bobby Kenny says, "Well, no, what does that mean?"
Yeah.
And it's an important hour coming up. It was preceded by a great homeopathic extended hit with Lisa Rooney.
Oh, thank you very much. And I have met Dr. Weiler. I've had a handful of conversations with him at some of the conferences. What a treat for your audience. He is such a brilliant man and so kind and generous with his
Yes.
information.
Oh, he
Yeah.
really is. We enjoy him immensely, and I'm grateful for him coming on today. So thank you, Lisa, for being on board.
Thank
And
you. It was so lovely to see you.
another great episode. You guys rewind it, replay it. We'll have to rebroadcast it on Facebook later. But for now, we're going to take a pause, and I'm going to go back to my stand-up segment, opening the hour 2 monologue, and then I'll be back here in the podcast set with James Lyons Weiler. Thanks again to Lisa Rooney, and thank you to all y'all for your support of health, freedom, and healing liberty right here on the Robert Scott Bell Show, where I remind you very simply and truthfully and honestly and powerfully, the power to heal is yours.